The crystal champagne flute clinked against the silver spoon, instantly silencing the room. My father, Kenneth, stood at the head of the long table, beaming under the chandelier's glow. He raised his glass to my younger sister, Brooke. "To the daughter who actually deserves our legacy," he announced, his voice thick with pride. "Tonight, we are signing the deed to the estate over to you. A wedding gift." The room erupted in applause. I didn't blink. I didn't clap. I just waited for the noise to die down, leaned forward, and asked in a voice that cut through the celebration like a scalpel, "Dad, are you going to tell her about the liens? Or should I? Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community." The silence that followed my question wasn't empty. It was heavy, suffocating, the kind of silence that usually precedes a verdict. My mother, Patricia, was the first to move. She let out a high, trilling laugh that sounded like glass shattering. "Oh, Kelsey, don't be so dramatic," she said, waving a manicured hand as if shooing away a fly. "We all know you love to ruin a good time, but this is your sister's night. Let's not bore everyone with technicalities." She pushed the deed toward Brooke, her smile tight and predatory. "Just sign, honey. It is just standard paperwork." Brooke hesitated, the pen hovering over the signature line. She looked at me, her eyes wide and confused, the conditioned obedience warring with the sudden tension in the room. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I simply walked over to the buffet, pushed aside a crystal bowl of punch, and laid my black leather portfolio down. The heavy thud it made against the mahogany sounded like a gavel hitting a bench. I wasn't a daughter disrupting a party. I was a forensic accountant securing a crime scene. For a split second, I looked at Brooke and felt a wave of exhaustion. I almost hadn't come tonight. I had spent the last 3 hours in my apartment, staring at the invitation, telling myself it wasn't my problem. I had escaped. I was out. Why should I walk back into the fire just to pull her out? But then I realized something. If I let them do this to her, if I let them chain her to their sinking ship while I watched from the shore, I wasn't free. I was just a runaway. To truly break the cycle, I couldn't just save myself. I had to dismantle the trap. I unzipped the portfolio. The sound was sharp, cutting through the murmurs of the guests. "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "Do not touch that pen, Brooke." Kenneth took a step toward me, his face flushing a dangerous shade of red. "That is enough, Kelsey. You are embarrassing yourself. Leave. Now. Or I will have security escort you out." I didn't even look at him. I pulled out the first stack of documents, paper-clipped and color-coded. "You can throw me out," I said, sliding the papers across the table until they rested directly on top of the deed Mom was trying to hide. "But you can't throw out public records. This isn't a gift, Brooke. It is a bankruptcy sentence. And I am not leaving until you read the fine print." Kenneth made a grab for the papers, but I was faster. I slid the top document toward Brooke. It wasn't a dense legal contract. It was a simplified balance sheet I had prepared myself, bold numbers highlighting the disaster. "Read it," I said. "That house isn't paid off. It is underwater. $145,000 underwater. And that monthly payment? It is not zero. It is $5,200, due on the 1st of every month for the next 28 years. Brooke stared at the paper, her brow furrowing. "But Dad said it was free and clear. He said we could live here rent-free while we saved for the wedding." Her voice was small, the voice of the golden child who had never been lied to, never been the target. She looked up at Kenneth, her eyes pleading for him to correct me, to tell her it was just a mistake. Kenneth didn't look at her. He looked at the guests, his smile fixed and brittle. "Kelsey is confused," he announced loudly, trying to regain control of the room. "She has always had a flair for drama. This is just standard refinancing. We are taking care of everything." "No, you are not," I said, pulling out the second document. "This is a foreclosure notice, dated 3 weeks ago. You haven't made a payment in 6 months. You aren't gifting her the house, Dad. You are transferring the title before the bank seizes it. You need her credit score because yours is torched. You are using her to bail out your bad decisions. I watched the realization hit Brooke. It wasn't just shock, it was a shattering of her worldview. She had been raised to believe she was special, chosen, protected. The idea that her parents, her champions, would use her as a shield was incomprehensible. It is called golden child syndrome, I thought, watching her struggle to process the betrayal. She has been conditioned to believe every gift is an act of love, never suspecting that sometimes a gift is just a lure. She doesn't know how to read the fine print because she never had to. Until tonight. Trevor, Brooke's fiancé, stepped forward. He was a smart guy, an investment banker. He picked up the balance sheet, his eyes scanning the columns. $5,000 a month? He asked, his voice low. Kenneth, you told me the estate was an asset. You said it was equity we could leverage for the business. It is an asset, Kenneth snapped, abandoning the facade of the benevolent father. The market is just down right now. We need to hold on to it until it bounces back. Brooke just needs to sign so we can restructure the loan. It is a family investment. Investment? I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. I pulled out the last stack of papers. Let's talk about your other investments then. Because I found where the money went, and it wasn't the market. The air in the room felt physically colder, as if someone had opened all the windows to the winter night. Kenneth took a step towards me, his hands shaking with rage. Patricia rushed to his side, her face a mask of indignation. You are ruining Christmas, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. You have always been jealous of your sister, jealous of her success, jealous of her happiness. Now you are trying to humiliate us in front of our partners because you can't stand to see her shine. My expression remained static. Emotions are liabilities in an audit. Jealous? I asked, my voice calm. I'm not jealous, Mom. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted watching you spin these lies. I'm exhausted watching you treat Brooke like a prize pony while you spend her future. Kenneth slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. That is enough, he roared. This debt is manageable. It is for family investments that will pay off tenfold. We are building a legacy here. You are too short-sighted to see the big picture. He turned to Brooke, his expression softening into a practiced look of paternal concern. Honey, don't listen to her. She doesn't understand business. We have a plan. We just need a little time. Sign the papers, and we will handle the payments. I promise. Brooke looked at him, then at me. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen again. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. The alternative that her entire life was built on a foundation of sand was too terrifying to contemplate. Kelsey, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Why are you doing this? Why are you being so mean? It was the question of a child who had never been burned. The gaslighting was working. They were spinning the narrative in real time, making me the villain, the disruptor, the bitter sister trying to tear down the family. I saw the guests exchanging uncomfortable glances, some looking at me with pity, others with annoyance. They just wanted the awkwardness to end. They wanted the party to continue. I took a deep breath. The smell of pine and expensive perfume filled my nose, sickly sweet and suffocating. I could have walked away then. I could have let her sign. I could have let them win. But I remembered the foreclosure notice. I remembered the dates. I remembered what I had found in the hidden accounts. I am not being mean, Brooke, I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I am being honest. And if you sign that paper, you aren't just signing a deed. You are signing away your freedom. Kenneth says this debt is for investments? Let me show you what those investments actually are. The word investments hung in the air, a flimsy shield against the avalanche of facts I was about to unleash. Trevor, who had been standing protectively near Brooke, took a tentative step back from Kenneth. He was an investment banker. He knew the smell of bad money. I flipped to the next section of my portfolio. Photos. High-resolution, time-stamped photos I had taken myself or pulled from public listings. Kenneth, I said, my voice steady. Is this what you call an investment? I held up a photo of a luxury RV, gleaming under the fluorescent lights of a storage facility in Nevada. A 2024 model. Top of the line. Patricia gasped. How did you find that? She whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. I ignored her. I found the receipt, Mom. $80,000. You didn't buy it for family trips. You bought it 3 months ago, right after you stopped paying the mortgage. You're hiding it in a storage unit 2 states away. Is that where you plan to live after the bank takes this house? Brooke looked at the photo, then at her parents. You bought an RV? She asked, her voice trembling. You told me you couldn't afford to help with the wedding flowers. You told me money was tight because of the market. It wasn't the market, I said, turning the page to expose the next layer of rot. It was crypto. I laid out a series of transaction logs, pages and pages of red ink. You didn't invest in a legacy, Dad. You put the second mortgage into a meme coin that crashed 6 weeks later. You lost $95,000 in a month. Trevor walked over to the table. He didn't ask for permission. He picked up the crypto logs, his eyes scanning the dates and amounts. His face went pale. This isn't investing, he said, looking at Kenneth with a mixture of pity and disgust. This is gambling. And you wanted Brooke to sign a deed that would make her liable for this? Do you have any idea what this would do to her credit? To our future? Kenneth sputtered, his face a mask of panicked indignation. It was a sure thing. I just needed more time. If Brooke signs, we can refinance, get some liquidity, and I can make it back. You have to spend money to make money, Trevor. You, of all people, should know that. Trevor dropped the papers back onto the table as if they were contaminated. He stepped back, physically putting distance between himself and the parents, moving to stand beside Brooke. I know fraud when I see it, Kenneth. And I am not marrying into a Ponzi scheme. Brooke looked at her fiancé, then at me. The reality was setting in. The golden pedestal she had stood on her whole life was actually a trapdoor, but she was still clinging to one last shred of hope. But the wedding fund, she stammered. Mom said you had a separate account for the wedding. That money is safe, right? I closed my eyes for a second. This was the part I hated. This was the part that would break her. I didn't want to be the one to do it, but I was the only one who would tell her the truth. I opened the final folder. Patricia jumped in before Kenneth could answer, her voice high and desperate, like a violin string about to snap. Of course, it is safe, sweetheart. We wouldn't touch your wedding fund. That is for your special day. Kenneth manages that account personally. It is sitting in a high-yield savings account right now, earning interest. Don't let your sister put crazy ideas in your head. She just wants to hurt you. I watched them. I watched the way Kenneth's eyes darted to the exit, the way beads of sweat were starting to break through his foundation. He looked like a cornered animal, willing to say anything, promise anything, just to survive the next 5 minutes. It was pathetic. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, let the hope bloom on Brooke's face just so she could feel the full weight of it when I crushed it. I hated myself for it, but pain was the only teacher they had left. It was safe, I said, my voice flat. Until October 4th, Kenneth froze. That date meant something to him. It was the day the walls closed in. I pulled out the final document. It wasn't a complex ledger or a graph. It was a simple bank statement from the joint account Kenneth managed for Brooke. I handed it to Trevor. I knew if I gave it to Brooke, she might tear it up. She might refuse to look. But Trevor would look. Trevor was a numbers guy. Read the transfer on line 4, I said. Trevor looked down. His eyes narrowed. He read it out loud, his voice devoid of emotion. Wire transfer, outgoing, $50,000. Recipient, First National Mortgage Servicing. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the ice melting in the glasses. Brooke stopped breathing. She turned to her father, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. You took the wedding money? She whispered. You took the deposit for the venue? Kenneth held up his hands, palms out, the universal gesture of the guilty. Honey, listen. It was a bridge loan. Just a short-term liquidity solution. I had to make the mortgage payments to keep the bank from foreclosing before we could transfer the deed to you. If I hadn't paid them, the deal would have fallen through. I was going to put it back as soon as the crypto rebounded. It was for you. I did it for you. You stole $50,000 from your daughter to hide the fact that you were broke, I said, correcting the record. You didn't do it to save the house. You did it to buy 3 months of silence. You stole her wedding to trick her into signing a bankruptcy decree. Patricia let out a sob, burying her face in her hands. We were going to pay it back, she wailed. We just needed the deed signed. Once Brooke had the house, we could have taken out a home equity line of credit and replaced the wedding money. I looked at Brooke. The final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. They weren't giving her a house. They were giving her a vessel they could drain again. They were going to use her credit, her name, and her future to take out more debt to pay back the money they had already stolen from her. It was a snake eating its own tail, and she was the meal. Trevor slowly folded the bank statement and placed it in his pocket. He didn't look at Kenneth. He didn't look at Patricia. He turned to Brooke. He took her hands, which were shaking violently now. Brooke, he said softly, the money is gone. There is no wedding fund. There is no house. There is only them, stealing from us. Brooke looked at him. Then at her parents. The golden child, the one who had been protected from every harsh wind, was suddenly standing in a hurricane. She looked at the deed on the table, the pen still lying there, a weapon she had almost used against herself. The illusion of the perfect family, the generous parents, the legacy had all dissolved into red ink and lies. She turned to Kenneth. Her voice wasn't small anymore. It was hollow. You stole from me, she said. You stood there and toasted to my future, and you had already stolen it. Kenneth's composure shattered. The mask of the confident patriarch fell away, revealing the terrified, cornered man beneath. Brooke! He shouted, his voice cracking. Don't say that. We did this for the family. For the legacy. We were this close to turning it around. It was just a short-term loan. I would have put it back with interest. Brooke screamed. It was a sound I had never heard from her before, raw, primal, and full of rage. A loan! You stole my wedding! You stole my future! You stood there and smiled and toasted while you robbed me blind. She grabbed the deed from the table and ripped it in half. Then she ripped it again, throwing the pieces at Kenneth's feet. I am not signing anything. I am not bailing you out. Patricia grabbed Brooke's arm. Honey, please, you have to listen. If you don't sign, we lose everything. The bank will take the house next week. We will be homeless. Do you want that? Do you want your parents on the street? I watched them, marveling at the sheer audacity. Even now, caught red-handed, they were still playing the victim. It is a psychological phenomenon called cognitive dissonance of the broken wallet, I realized. They genuinely believe they are temporarily embarrassed millionaires. They cannot process that their theft is a crime because, in their minds, the money was always theirs to begin with. They see their children not as people, but as assets to be liquidated when the market turns. Enough. The voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than Kenneth's shouting ever could. Grandma Eleanor stepped out from the crowd of guests. She was leaning heavily on her cane, her face pale, but her eyes were burning. She walked past the guests, past the shattered punch bowl, past me, and stopped directly in front of her son. Mother, Kenneth stammered, trying to straighten his tie. This is just a misunderstanding. Kelsey has everyone confused. Be silent, Eleanor commanded. She looked down at the shredded deed, then at the crypto logs still scattered on the table. You stole from your daughter. You lied to your family, and you tried to use my estate to cover your gambling debts. It wasn't gambling, Kenneth protested, sweat pouring down his face. It was an investment strategy. It was theft, Eleanor said. And it ends tonight. She turned to the crowd, her voice unwavering. I apologize to everyone for this display. The party is over. Please leave. As the guests hurriedly grabbed their coats, Eleanor turned back to Kenneth and Patricia. You two stay. We are going to have a very long conversation about the family trust. Specifically, the clause that allows me to disinherit anyone who brings shame upon this family. Kenneth fell to his knees. Literally. He grabbed his mother's hand, weeping openly. Mom, please. No. You can't cut us off. We have nothing. The creditors will eat us alive. We just need a little help. Just a bridge loan. Patricia joined him, sobbing into her hands. We did it for the family. We just wanted to keep up appearances. You know how important the family name is. Eleanor pulled her hand away, looking at them with a mixture of pity and disgust. The family name means nothing if the people bearing it are thieves. You wanted to keep up appearances? Well, now you will have to keep up with reality. You are cut off. Effective immediately. She turned to me. Kelsey, she said, her voice softening. Thank you. I know that wasn't easy, but you saved your sister. I looked at Brooke. She was sitting in a chair, Trevor kneeling beside her, holding her hand. She looked shell-shocked, broken, but safe. I nodded at Eleanor. It had to be done. The for sale sign went up on the estate gates the very next morning. It took 3 months to sell, and every penny of the proceeds went to creditors, lawyers, and the bank. Kenneth and Patricia moved into a 2-bedroom rental across town. It is a perfectly fine place, clean and respectable. But I know that to them, it feels like a prison cell because there is no audience there to applaud them. They are learning to live within their means, mostly because Grandma Eleanor controls the purse strings now, and she has a memory like a steel trap. I sat down with Brooke and Trevor a few weeks later. We weren't at a gala. We were at their kitchen table with takeout pizza. We went over their finances not as a forensic auditor tearing apart a crime scene, but as a sister helping them build a foundation. We set up a savings plan to replace the $50,000. It will take them 2 years to earn it back. But this time, the money will be real. It won't be a loan, and it won't come with strings attached. Brooke is still healing. She is learning who she is when she isn't standing on a pedestal, but she is stronger than I gave her credit for. She is learning to read the fine print. I went back to my own apartment that night. It isn't a mansion. It doesn't have crystal chandeliers or a grand ballroom, but the rent is paid, the lights are on, and every single thing inside it belongs to me. It was quiet, a deep, settling silence that felt like a warm blanket. I poured a glass of wine, cheap stuff from the corner store, but it tasted better than anything served at that Christmas party. I opened my laptop one last time. The file named Family Audit was sitting on my desktop, a digital monument to the war I had just fought. I didn't hesitate. I dragged it to the trash and clicked empty. The icon vanished. For years, I thought I was the black sheep because I didn't fit into their picture-perfect frame. Now I realize I wasn't the stain on the portrait. I was the one holding the mirror. And finally, I can put it down. I am not the villain of this story. I am just free. If you have ever had to be the villain to save someone you love, share this story. You aren't alone.